Blanca Zelaya filed a complaint and her employer conducted an independent investigation. But what actually happened was a setup that was designed to punish, not protect her, while the harasser pulled the strings behind the scenes. By the end of this video, you will understand that not all workplace investigations are legitimate, what a fake investigation looks like, and how to spot the rigged process and protect yourself. Hi, I'm Harlow Reed, employment lawyer, HR consultant, and creator of the HR Insider. On this channel, I do more than give my legal opinion. I talk about real legal cases to show how the law might apply to your situation. So, fake investigations, they can be difficult to spot, especially if you're not familiar with how a proper investigation is supposed to work. The case we are talking about today is intended to help you with that by providing a real example of how employers can weaponize the investigation process rather than use it to protect workers. Okay, let's talk about it. The content on this channel is for informational purposes only and shouldn't be taken as legal advice. Always consult a qualified attorney or HR professional for guidance on your specific situation. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. This case starts with Blanca Zelaya, who worked as a custodian for UNICCO Services Company starting in 2004. Blanca was responsible for providing cleaning services at a commercial building in Washington, D.C., and she was a consistent and reliable employee. But everything changed for Blanca in January of 2005 because that's when Carlos Alarcon was promoted to building operations manager. Now, prior to his promotion, Carlos and Blanca had worked together at Unico without incident. But once he became Blanca's direct supervisor, he almost immediately began to push the boundaries of his authority and not in a professional way. After Carlos was promoted, he began to solicit Blanca with inappropriate and unwanted sexual advances. And this wasn't just a one time incident. It wasn't just a supervisor making an inappropriate comment or asking for a date. According to Blanca, it was a pattern that started almost immediately after Carlos Arlecon was promoted to her supervisor. Blanca said that while she was pregnant, Carlos Arlecon began making explicit and unwelcome sexual comments, along with repeated propositions, attempts to pressure her into a relationship or something more, but she continued to say no. And that's when the harassment turned into something more dangerous: retaliation. Blanca said that Carlos used his authority to punish her for rejecting him. He revoked her health insurance, he enlisted other supervisors to monitor Blanca, and he had her written up for things that she didn't even do. She was denied breaks, forced into an HR meeting under pressure, and ultimately transferred to a job site they knew was about to shut down. All of this, according to her, because she said no and refused to give in to Carlos's advances. This wasn't about carrying out his responsibilities as a supervisor, enforcing policy, or doing the things that he was obligated to do in his job responsibilities. This was about Carlos exercising control, power, and punishment. And when an employer allows this kind of campaign to unfold against a worker, let alone a pregnant employee, it's not only inhumane because nothing is done to stop it, they are failing not just that one employee who is suffering, but all of their employees because they're enabling an environment that can run rampant with abuse. Now, Blanca, she didn't stay silent. Despite what she was enduring at work, she found the courage to follow the process needed to protect herself. And on April 18th, 2006, she filed a formal complaint with the District of Columbia Office of Human Rights, and that complaint was cross filed with the EEOC. And Blanca described in detail what she had endured: sexual harassment, retaliation, and a hostile work environment at the hands of her supervisor, Carlos Alarcon. And in her statement, she named names, she gave specific acts of misconduct, and she backed it up with the timeline. She did everything perfectly, everything you're supposed to do when you are being mistreated at work. But rather than take her allegations seriously, Unico's internal investigation was more focused on protecting the company and punishing Blanca. According to Blanca, the so called investigation didn't correct the wrongdoing. Instead, her supervisors continued monitoring her fabricated disciplinary actions and revoked her health benefits. One of the supervisors even took Blanca to a meeting with human resources, a move that felt more like intimidation than support. And eventually, they transferred her to a site they knew was about to lose its contract, essentially setting her up to be let go. And that's not a legitimate investigation, that's retaliation dressed up as a procedure. And that's exactly why, after exhausting her administrative remedies, Blanca filed a federal lawsuit on December 21st, 2007, because when the system failed her on the inside, she took it to the courts. In her lawsuit, Blanca alleged that from 2005 to 2006, she was subjected to ongoing sexual harassment and retaliation by her direct supervisor, Carlos Arlecan, after he was promoted to building operations manager. Ultimately, it was a complaint that included sexual harassment, retaliation, and a hostile work environment. So, how did Unico respond to Blanca's lawsuit in court? Well, like a lot of companies in this situation, they didn't admit to wrongdoing. They went straight into damage control mode. First, they filed a motion to dismiss, which is a pretty common move. It's basically the company saying, we don't think this case should even go to court. It's often one of the first things employers will do when they're accused of retaliation or harassment. But they didn't stop there. When Blanca asked for documents to help prove her case, Unico pushed back hard. They tried to limit what she could access, fighting to keep key information that she needed out of the record. In other words, they wanted to control the narrative and make sure as little damaging evidence as possible made it into the courtroom. And the court's response, you guessed it, they didn't buy it. Thankfully for Blanca, the judge saw right through the smoke and mirrors, and they weren't convinced by Unico's efforts to shut things down early, and they let some of Blanca's most serious claims move forward. And the court said that while Unico may have claimed to respond to Blanca's complaints, the court found no credible evidence of a real impartial investigation. Instead, what followed looked like a coordinated effort to discredit, punish, and ultimately push Blanca out of the company. So let's talk about the difference between a legitimate investigation and what Blanca Zelaya said actually happened to her. A real investigation should always start with a neutral, unbiased investigator that demonstrates prompt action, interviews key witnesses, and has a very thorough review and approach to the evidence. Most importantly, it protects the employee from retaliation and it leads to real consequences when misconduct is found. Now let's look at what allegedly happened in Blanca's case. According to the lawsuit, the people involved in the investigation weren't neutral at all. They were the very same people connected to the harassment. Instead of protecting Blanca, they retaliated. She was monitored, written up, lost her health benefits, and was ultimately transferred to a building where Unico was about to lose the contract, effectively setting her up to be let go. And that's not an investigation, that's a cover up. And it's a reminder that just because a company claims they looked into it doesn't mean they actually did. If you're watching this and thinking, this sounds a lot like what happened to me, I've actually put together a whole retaliation playlist that breaks down real cases just like this one. So if you want to understand your rights, what retaliation really looks like, and how courts respond, check out the playlist after this video. It's there to help you see the patterns and know you're not imagining things. I'll put the link in the description. Blanca Zelaya did what so many employees are told to do. She reported the harassment, followed the complaint process, and trusted the system would protect her. But instead of protection, she faced retaliation. And instead of a fair investigation, she was met with silence, surveillance, and ultimately job loss. Her story is a reminder that not every workplace investigation is what it claims to be. And sometimes the process itself is used to silence the people it was meant to protect. You've ever experienced something similar, or you're not sure whether what you went through was fair? Please know this: you're not alone. And the problem isn't you, it's the system. And even though the system doesn't always work the way it should, your voice, it still matters, because speaking up is how change starts. It's how people like Blanca and others force the truth into the light. So don't let fear or silence win, because your story could be the one that opens someone else's eyes. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you understand what a fake investigation can look like, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And as always, stay informed, stay empowered, and don't be afraid to speak up. I'll see you in the next video.